Welcome to the WalterFootball.com podcast. This is episode 322. We're doing our 2021 NFL free agency breakdown. Joined once again by Jacob Camenker from NBC Sports Boston. Jacob, how are you?
I'm doing great. I've been enjoying NFL free agency the past couple of weeks. It's been pretty wild. I thought maybe with the cap crunch, we'd get a slower start to free agency, but it picked up right away. So it was right off the bat, lots of dudes got signed. It was a lot of fun. Totally different NFL landscape now than it was just a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, a lot has changed. A lot of big money signings, a lot of small money signings too. It seems like it wasn't in between. Either guys got a ton of money or guys got no money at all. So we're gonna break everything down. We're going to go position by position rather than go free agent by free agent, because I feel like we'll be on the air for 5 hours if we do that. So that's not good. But yeah, it's nice to be back. I was we had off last week because I had my wisdom teeth removed and I couldn't talk. So that wouldn't have been good. It would have been ugly if I bled all over the place during the show. So please hit the like button, the subscribe button. Send this to someone who may like football and doesn't know about the show. All that would be great. Let's just dive into it. Let's start with the quarterbacks. I'm going to name the major signings, not the 1 year, $1 million guys. Although it's not, there are none of that for quarterbacks, but yeah. So for quarterbacks, the major signings, we had the Patriots re-signed Cam Newton, 1 year, $14 million. Texans signed Tyrod Taylor, 1 year, $12.5 million. Saints re-signed Jameis Winston, 1 year, $12 million. Bears, the Bears signed Andy Dalton, 1 year, $10 million. Redskins signed Ryan Fitzpatrick, 1 year, $10 million, and then Bill signed Mitchell Trubisky for 1 year, only $2.5 million. So out of those signings, what do you think was the best move? What do you think is the worst move, or any other thoughts?
Yeah, I think I'm going to say probably the two best moves are Washington signing Ryan Fitzpatrick and the Bills getting Mitch Trubisky. Starting with Trubisky, he's just so cheap, and developing him behind Josh Allen seems like a no-brainer. He fits that system, a quarterback that can move. He can throw the ball, too. He'll have more weapons here, and he'll have more creative offense. So maybe Brian Daboll can unlock his potential there. And even if they don't, they're not taking much of a risk, and he's not going to be the starter. So, best case scenario, if he has to play, if there's a preseason, he plays really well, and they can flip him for a pick for a team that needs a starter and that uses a mobile quarterback. So I like that fit a lot. I also like Fitzpatrick's fit with Washington. They needed someone who could take downfield chances. The one thing that they lacked last year was a quarterback who could really throw downfield. Alex Smith did a good job of avoiding turnovers for the most part. He had a couple bad games, but they needed someone who would be able to get the most out of Terry McLaurin and Logan Thomas, and now Curtis Samuel's there too. I think Fitzpatrick's going to provide them that. He's going to provide them veteran leadership, and I think that that's going to be big because they needed to replace Alex Smith in that locker room, and I think Fitzpatrick commands and demands respect. So I think that's a good fit on a 1 year, $10 million deal. And, now if they don't get one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the draft with their 19th pick, or if they don't feel confident in trading up, they at least have a good bridge. So I think those were my two favorite signings of the quarterbacks. The others, I like Cam Newton a little bit just because that's a heavily incentive-laden contract, and I think he still has potential. But I think at this point, he's not quite as good as those other two.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you said. Trubisky for $2.5 million is so cheap. Usually, an average backup quarterback will go for $4 million. He's only $2.5 million, and I have to think that he's better than the average backup quarterback, given the potential he had coming out of North Carolina. And I know he struggled with the Bears, but he's still young. He still has a lot of upside. And like you said, they can flip him for a draft pick and get something out of this. So I like the move a lot. I love the Fitzpatrick signing to have him as a veteran for Taylor Heineke to kind of get him developed. That I think is pretty key. Or whomever they draft, they could draft someone in the second round or first round or something. Just to have that veteran presence, like a better version of what they had last year with Alex Smith. I think that was great. And yeah, Cam Newton signing was pretty solid. I didn't expect it. I think both you and I thought that he would leave. And, I think it's fine to bring him back and to have him as a mentor for whomever they draft. I think that's perfectly fine. He's probably going to start this year. until he gets hurt. I mean, unfortunately, that always happens. But if he can stay healthy, he's definitely going to pay off this salary. As for the worst of the quarterbacks, I think Tyrod Taylor going to the Texans for $12.5 million doesn't really make much sense. Now, we thought that the Texans were going to trade Deshaun Watson and they were going to draft someone with the pick they were going to get, one of the picks they were going to get for Watson. Now, Watson may not play at all, and it doesn't sound like they might be able to trade him for a while, depending on the lawsuits. I don't know. Like, we don't have all the facts, so I don't really want to speculate. But like, the Texans are super trapped right now, and they're going to be starting Tyrod Taylor for $12.5 million. Just seems terrible. And then Jameis Winston for $12 million. I don't really get it. I mean, Taysom Hill did a good job last year. I don't know why they need a backup quarterback for $12 million. So what do you think about those?
Yeah, so I'll weigh in first on the Saints situation there. Like, I understand wanting to bring Winston in to compete with Hill. I think the bigger issue there is that they paid Hill like a huge contract and have had to push money into further years. Now, granted, there's a lot of void years. Like, he's not getting paid like a true number one quarterback or anything. It just looks like it when you look at the ledger a little bit. But I don't understand why they would sign both of those guys and not just roll with one. They must be high enough on Winston that they want to give him a shot, which I can understand. I like Winston's potential, believe me. And maybe they want to keep Hill in that backup role where he can do all sorts of things on the field. If he loses the starting contest to Jameis Winston. But yeah, that was a little odd, specifically because the Saints are so cap strapped too and had to let some other people go and restructure contracts. And, a lot of people claim this time you're like, oh, they're restructuring contracts like the cap isn't real. It's like, no, it is real. We do see it affect teams at times. It's just not all the time. And, sometimes you can move stuff around. So, and often what happens is you push cap debts into future years. So the Saints might just end up being screwed more down the line than they were even this year. So you got to be careful with the cap. So I'll be interested to see what happens there. But I do like Jameis Winston, the player. Tyrod Taylor, I didn't get that signing either. Like, I think he's one of the better backups in the league, but I don't know why he's worth $12.5 million this offseason, because I don't think he moves the needle for the Texans either. Like, sure, you're gonna have him start if Watson, continues to hold out and you can't trade him because of what's going on off the field with him. And I think as long as those issues are there, he will not be able to be traded. Again, I don't know all the facts there, but it's going to be difficult. So if you're stuck paying Deshaun Watson and Tyrod Taylor that much for a losing team, that's kind of that's not a good way to win. And GJL Reed just mentioned Andy Dalton, 1 year, $10 million deal. That was a little bit rich for me in terms of Andy Dalton's price. But the Bears apparently think he could be a good starter for them, or at least, he was the starter they could get because they wanted Russell Wilson, but he wasn't really available. So my dad likes Andy Dalton to the Bears. So take that for what it's worth. But I think he was a fine signing, but they paid too much for him.
Yeah, a little too much. I think it's fine. I didn't hate the signing. I didn't love it. It was okay. He can get the team to the playoffs if they build the offensive lineup, and it seems like they're going in that direction. The problem with the Bears is that they have the 20th pick in the draft. So they're not going to get one of the first round quarterbacks unless someone falls to them. Doesn't seem likely unless they move up. So they're probably stuck with Dalton for 1 year, and it's not like they have any alternatives. So I'm okay with it. I don't hate it. Don't like it. So just move on to running backs. The Packers re-signed Aaron Jones. A little surprising. 4 years, $48 million. The Seahawks re-signed Chris Carson, 2 years, $14 million. The Raiders signed Kenyon Drake, 2 years, $11 million. And then the Texans signed Phillip Lindsay 1 year for $3.25 million. So what do you think about these signings?
Yeah, so there are a couple that are fine. Like the Lindsey signing, I think that's a good, chance taken there. Chris Carson, you know what you're getting with him. I'm surprised he went back to the Seahawks. I just didn't expect them to re-sign him, but I think that was about the right price for him because some of that deal's incentivized. But what are the Packers and the Raiders doing? Like the Packers just spent a second-round pick on A.J. Dillon, and they decided to pay Aaron Jones $12 million a year. And now I'm not saying that Aaron Jones isn't worth that. I think he's probably worth it, but we've seen in the past running backs that get big money contracts. They don't often live up to the price tag for the duration of the contract. And where they had a readily available alternative in A.J. Dillon, I don't understand why they didn't let Jones walk and then collect a compensatory pick for him later on. He's a big part of that offense, but A.J. Dillon looked really good against the Titans. So could you get by with him, and could you re-sign Jamal Williams so then you have a good two-back attack again? I personally would have just done that. I don't think Aaron Jones is going to be bad for the Packers, but I think 3 years from now, we might look at that deal and be like, oh yeah, they could have just rolled with Dylan and been fine. And, they could have spent that money upgrading other positions for Aaron Rodgers of the offense. So that'll be something to watch. I don't think that was smart. And then Kenyon Drake, why are the Raiders signing him? What are they doing? Like that's one of the worst signings in free agency, in my opinion. Like Kenyon Drake's a fine player, and they're going to use him as a pass catching weapon out of the backfield. So I like that fit. But they already had Josh Jacobs on that offense, one of the better running backs in the league. They could have easily gotten someone similar to Drake in the draft if they really wanted someone. And then the other whole part of this is they completely destroyed their offensive line to get Kenyon Drake. They're now without Rodney Hudson, who's gone. He's in Arizona. Gabe Jackson is with the Seahawks, so there's a hole at right guard. And then right tackle, Trent Brown was traded to the Patriots. So you need to fill 3 starting offensive line positions. Now, they did cut Richie Incognito and bring him back, but he's going to start at left guard. They re-signed Andre James to take over for Rodney Hudson, so we'll see if that works, but he's not going to be as good as Rodney Hudson. But then the right side line's still a mess. And one of the reasons Derek Carr has been good the last couple of years is because of that line. So I have no idea what they're thinking signing a backup running back. The only thing I could really think of is the Raiders social media department tweeted out a graphic of Kenyon Drake and Josh Jacobs and entitled it Drake and Josh, like the old Nickelodeon show. I think the social team might have just said, hey, we need you to sign Kenyon Drake to do this. And Mike Mayock was like, that's going to go viral. We got to do it. So I personally hated that move. Maybe Drake works out for them, but I still think that the logic of getting rid of 3 upper echelon offensive linemen was not the greatest move by the Raiders.
Man, I'm going to date myself. I never heard of Drake and Josh before that post. So I guess that's cool. I know my wife has heard of it at least. So she had a kick out of it, but I don't even know what it was. But I mean, we agree again. Kenny Drake's signing made no sense. I mean, you spend a first round pick on a running back. Why would you spend significant money on a backup unless you lose complete faith in the starter? And it doesn't seem like the Raiders have. They still like Josh Jacobs a lot. And then Aaron Jones, I mean, why spend a second round pick on a running back when you're going to give Aaron Jones $48 million? Why, like you said, why not just bring back Jamal Williams, who signed for $7 million with Detroit? And then you have your second round pick from last year. So just go that route, and you spend so much less money, and you can re-sign your offensive lineman who left. So I think that would have been a lot better. I don't know what the Packers are doing. Aaron Rodgers is going to have to save them again next year. The team's going to be even worse because the offensive line is going to be a lot worse next year. It just looks terrible. The only signing I like here is Lindsey for $3.25 million. Such a cheap deal for the Texans. David Johnson is going to get hurt, so Lindsey's a good insurance plan. Carson's okay. I don't mind it. GJL Reed brought up Mike Davis to the Falcons. I forgot to list that because that happened today. 2 years, $5.5 million. I like the signing. He can be their third down back. That's pretty good. Then we had a question for Chris Henderson who says, do you think Todd Gurley is going to play this season? He's still a free agent. I'm leaning no, because he was terrible last year, despite Atlanta having a decent offensive line. But if there are a lot of injuries to running back, that some team could sign him, but probably not.
Yeah, I think the only way you sign Todd Gurley is if you're I really need a goal line hammer on my team. I don't have that type of backup. And you get 5 good carries a game out of Todd Gurley. Some contender might take a chance on him if they need veteran running back help, but I wouldn't overly bet on that happening. And I like the Mike Davis signing as well. I think he's one of the more underrated running back free agents out there. You'll forget how good he was replacing Christian McCaffrey. So for Atlanta, giving Matt Ryan another weapon out of the backfield, that is definitely a good thing.
Yeah, and Tony says that Lindsey's better than David Johnson. I think you can say that. I mean, you can't count on Johnson staying healthy, so that's definitely part of it. All right, receivers. Giants signed Kenny Golladay, 4 years, $72 million. Jets signed Corey Davis, 3 years, $37.5 million. Redskins signed Curtis Samuel, 3 years, $34.5 million. Patriots signed Nelson Aguilar and Kendrick Bourne, 2 years, $26 million for Aguilar, and 3 years, $22.5 million for Bourne. Jaguars signed Marvin Jones, 2 years, $14.5 million. Dolphins signed Will Fuller, 1 year, $10 million. Steelers re-signed Juju Smith-Schuster, 1 year, $8 million. That was a huge shock to me. And then the Raiders signed John Brown, 1 year, $3.75 million. So what are your thoughts about the receivers?
Yeah, so there are three that stand out to me. We'll start with the obvious one, as you mentioned. Juju Smith-Schuster getting a 1 year deal worth $8 million is stunning. He had more money on the table, according to reports, to possibly go to the Ravens or the Chiefs, but it didn't sound like, Kenny Golladay type money or anything like that. It sounded like shorter term, like number 2 receiver money. So he ended up going back to Pittsburgh, which I think is fine for him. Like, maybe I would have gone to a team that has a quarterback with maybe more left in the tank. But I mean, for the Steelers, getting $8 million and you get Juju back even for 1 year, that's a win. The other 1 year deal that I really liked was the Will Fuller one for the Dolphins. They were really missing a speed element, potential number 1 receiver in that offense. Devontae Parker's great contested catch guy. Mike Gesicki can do the same, but now they have that true speed threat, Will Fuller. He could be a number 1, really good compliment to Parker, and I think Tua Tagovailoa is going to love throwing to him. So I think those two fits stand out to me, but my favorite signing is Curtis Samuel to Washington. I mean, he fits exactly what they want to do with offense. He is versatile. He can play any receiver position. He can play running back. He can catch passes out of the backfield. And now they have a quarterback who can get him the ball downfield. Between his speed and Terry McLaurin's speed, they're going to be really hard to guard. And then you have mismatch threats like Antonio Gibson and J.D. McKissick out of the backfield. It's going to be really difficult to contain every weapon on this Washington offense. So I love Curtis Samuel, and getting him for 3 years and just over $11 million a year. That could end up being a steal because he's still just 24. I think people don't realize how young he is because he's been in the league for 4 years. And also he went to school with Terry McLaurin. So I think those are probably my 3 favorite signings of the group. I don't know what your thoughts on this group in general are.
Yeah, well, I love the first 2 that you mentioned. Will Fuller, 1 year, $10 million. I mean, he's an injury risk, so that's the downside. But for 1 year, you're not risking very much. So there's almost no downside, and you're giving to a great downfield weapon if he can stay healthy. So I love that signing. And then Smith-Schuster, I can't believe he went back to Pittsburgh. That's so shocking to me. But, the Steelers are going to benefit from that, and I think that's a great signing. I love the John Brown signing because the Raiders lost Nelson Aguilar. They need someone to replace him, so he's going to provide the deep threat for Derek Carr. Now, granted, Carr's not going to have any protection to get the ball downfield to John Brown, but theoretically, it's a good signing at least. I mean, maybe their backup lineman will work out, but probably not. And I like the Curtis Samuel signing. I'm not like as high on it as you are, but I think it's a good fit for sure. And yeah, it'll give the Redskins a dynamic weapon. They can use them all over the place. So I like that a lot. And that Kenny Golladay, I think, he got the most money here, but I think deservedly so. I like the Giants really needed a number 1 receiver, and yeah, maybe they overpaid a little bit, but they have to give Daniel Jones the best chance to succeed as possible. And to do that, they had to give him a number 1 receiver, and Kenny Golladay was the best guy available. So I have to at least admire the Giants for making sure that Daniel Jones can succeed.
Yeah, I'm not as high on the Golladay signing. I just think I like him as a player, but I think there is some injury risk to him, and I'm not sure how well he's going to separate as he gets older if he deals with more injuries. So I think there's a little more risk in it for me. But I do think that the Giants had to make a move like that. So I do support their decision to do it, especially because it'll free up Darius Slayton more because, teams won't be treating him as the number 1 receiver there anymore. So there were a couple other more questionable signings. I know what the Patriots did particularly stands out. It seems like they overpaid a bit for Aguilar, Nelson Aguilar. I think that he'll fit well in the offense, but $13 million a year or $11 million a year plus incentives, whatever it is for him. I think that was a little bit too much for him. And Kendrick Bourne, I like him as a backup, but they're paying him like low end starter money. So I'm not sure I'm in love with that. I think these 2 players fit well with what the Patriots want to do and need to do really more than anything else, because they needed pass catching weapons for Cam Newton or whoever else is going to be their quarterback. But there's definitely reason to, look at those signings and say that they overpaid a bit. But I think I'm higher on Aguilar's fit than most probably are. But yeah, this was uncharacteristic of the Patriots to overpay for receivers, but they need the help because they cannot evaluate talent at the position.
Yeah, I mean, based on these signings, they clearly can't. I don't understand this money that they gave out. Like, if they gave Aguilar like a 1 year, $5 million deal, I think that would have been fine. But obviously, they thought he was worth more than that. And I just don't see it. I mean, he dropped so many passes, and I know he had a good year with the Raiders, his first good year. Like, maybe that's a sign of things to come. But man, you gave him more money than Will Fuller got. It just doesn't make any sense to me at all. Like, you could have had Will Fuller, you could have had Juju Smith-Schuster, but you decided to pay Nelson Aguilar $13 million a year. Like, that's crazy. And Bourne's okay, but he's still making more than he should. I think like $7 million a year. It seems like more than that. Like, Juju Smith-Schuster is making $1 million more per year than Kendrick Bourne. This makes no sense. I think the worst signing here, I think, is Corey Davis. Like, 3 years, $37.5 million. I get the upside. I mean, he was the 5th pick in the draft a few years ago. But he really hasn't shown anything. Like, he had a few good games last year for sure. But before that, he was just a bust. And it's fair to wonder if he was playing for a contract. And like, maybe we see him regress. Like, maybe not. Maybe he plays well, but I don't know if he can satisfy the price tag here. What do you think about Corey Davis?
Yeah, I'm not wild about it, especially when you see how the rest of the receiver market played out. When I first saw him sign for that, I was like, all right, I understand this. Like, there are a lot of receivers on the market. They're all going to get paid. It's going to be hard for the Jets to land the one they want. So they're getting Corey Davis. But it ended up being, that Corey Davis got the 3rd most average annual value of receivers on the market, behind only Galladay and Nelson Aguilar, I believe, as of right now. And he's barely behind Aguilar at all, and he's getting an extra year on the contract. So I think Davis could pan out, but like you said, his best performance came in a contract year, so there's reason for skepticism. If they had signed him to this type of deal, but it was really just like a 1-year deal where this year was guaranteed and beyond this there isn't anything, I would have more faith in it. But I think that it seems like they're committing to him longer term, which is a calculated risk, especially if Sam Darnold's going to be the quarterback there. Like, I still think Darnold has upside, but like, if he doesn't pan out, then you're just wasting Corey Davis this year, and you could have just put anyone out there.
Yeah, that's true. We got a request to talk about Dante Moncrief, which I think is a great signing because it'll make the Texans worse, and that means they'll get the number 1 pick next year. They have some tough competition. The Lions and the Eagles are both going to be terrible, so the Texans need as many bad players as possible. Maybe that's why they signed Tyrod Taylor. A question here. Do you think Watson gets traded? I don't think anyone's touching that situation right now until it plays out. Because no one really knows what's going to happen. Like, are you going to trade multiple 1st-round picks for a quarterback who can never play for you? Like, I think it has to play out before anything happens with Watson. So we'll see. All right, let's go to tight ends. The Patriots signed Jonnu Smith 4 years, $50 million. They also signed Hunter Henry 3 years, $37.5 million. Giants signed Kyle Rudolph 2 years, $14 million. Buccaneers re-signed Robert Gronkowski 1 year, $10 million. And the Seahawks signed Gerald Everett 1 year, $6 million. So I went on a long write-up about the Patriots tight end signings. You live in New England. I'm curious to hear what you have to say about the Patriots tight end signings and the other guys here.
Okay, so first thing I want to mention about Kyle Rudolph. There is a snag in that deal right now related to a physical Rudolph took, reported by Mike Garofalo of NFL.com. They think he needs surgery, so that deal might get renegotiated. So I don't have much thoughts on that right now. But as for the Patriots situation at tight end, you make an excellent point when you say that, top paid tight ends have not worked out recently. And the Austin Hooper example last year is a great one because he was great with the Falcons. And then, Harrison Bryant arguably outplayed him at times last year. So that wasn't ideal for the Browns. But I think the Patriots are a different scenario here because this offense just functions so much better when they run 2 tight end sets, the 12 personnel looks. And this is basically Belichick, in my estimation, it's Belichick admitting that he was wrong last year when he took Devin Asiasi and Dalton Keene in the 3rd round and traded up to get both of them. I think he's still willing to develop them, but I think he's saying like, yeah, I misevaluated that tight end class. We know Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry are good. Like there's no denying, like they're probably a little bit overpaid in this scenario. But I think that Jonnu Smith, with his versatility and just his after the catch ability, fits very well in New England and could easily become the number one target on that team. Especially since Cam Newton has loved throwing to tight ends during his career. And then having Hunter Henry to, work alongside him, I think that's going to really benefit this passing game. And it's going to allow Josh McDaniels to do a lot of what he was able to do during Rob Gronkowski's heyday, when he had Aaron Hernandez before that all, went out of control. And then, Scott Chandler, Dwayne Allen through the years, they've always, when they've had two good tight ends, their offense has hummed. And I know part of that was Tom Brady, but I think that with these guys, they're going to have a chance to, really get the offense back up to snuff after what was a terrible year. And Belichick's basically admitting that he's not good at evaluating pass catching talent because that tight end class last year was terrible. And he took 2 third-rounders. And again, I think Asiasi especially has upside, but I think this is Belichick saying like, you know what? No, we need 2 good tight ends. We've been without one for 2 years. I think they have a total of or they're averaging 27 catches per year the last 2 years from their tight end spot, by far the worst in the NFL. So they had to do something. Will this work? I'm not sure, but I do trust Josh McDaniels to properly utilize these guys. So I'm willing to spend extra at the position, even if it means going against the paying tight ends big money rule.
Yeah, I get that. Like at the end when you said it was a lot of it was Tom Brady, I think definitely a lot of it was Tom Brady. I don't know if Cam Newton is going to use these guys as well or whomever they draft. I know he made good work of Greg Olsen, but I think Greg Olsen is better than both of these guys. Jonnu Smith, I don't get at all. Like he just hasn't. He never lived up to his potential in Tennessee. He has a lot of athletic talent. Like he has upside. But maybe this is another case of Bill Belichick not evaluating tight end or pass catching very well. Hunter Henry, like if you told me Hunter Henry's going to stay healthy, I would like the signing, but you can't count on him. Like he's always injured. So it's a big risk for him. So yeah, I'm pretty down on these signings. As I said on the website, like every big tight end signing over $20 million over the past 4 years has failed, except for Kelsey and Kittle, like the elite of the elite tight ends. Like every single tight end signing has failed. So the history is going against the Patriots here. Maybe it works out, but I have my doubts. But like I said, if Henry stays healthy, I like it. The Gronkowski signing is the best one here, right? I mean, he's coming back. Like he had a great game in the Super Bowl. I was actually watching. I've been rewatching the 2020 season. I'm up to I just finished week 3, and like the announcers are saying, "Oh, Gronk's only here to block," because he had that bad start to his year, and I was just laughing because like he ended the year so well. But yeah, I mean, bringing him back for only 1 year, no risk. I think that's definitely the best move here.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. There's no risk in bringing Gronk back. 1, he makes Brady happy. 2, he can block. And 3, the number one thing that they did with Gronk last year was they didn't utilize him until they really needed to, until it was crunch time. Second half of the season, they're fighting for the playoff spot. Gronk becomes a bigger part of the game plan. Super Bowl, Gronk becomes a huge part of the game plan. It's just how he's worked in recent years because you don't want to use them all up at the beginning of the year and then have him get hurt. So I think that Gronk, as long as Brady's around, Gronk will be interested in playing. So getting him on a 1-year deal for $10 million, sure, sign me up. Bring him as much of that core back as you can. You'll have a good shot at repeating or at least making another deep playoff run.
Yeah, for sure. I'm surprised they haven't signed James White yet. So we'll see if that happens. TJS, I thought the Dolphins own the Texans' #1 pick. That's this year, not in 2022. So the Texans still can get that top pick. All right, the offensive lineman, the 49ers signed Trent Williams, 6 years, $138 million. It's really a 3-year deal, but it's still for a lot of money. $55 million guaranteed. Chiefs signed Joe Tooney, 5 years, $80 million. Chargers signed Corey Linsley, 5 years, $62.5 million. Ravens signed Kevin Zeitler, 3 years, $22 million. Chargers signed Matt Filer, 3 years, $21 million. Patriots re-signed David Andrews, 4 years, $19 million. Chiefs signed Kyle Long out of retirement, 1 year, $5 million, and 49ers signed Alex Mack 1 year, $5.5 million. So what are your thoughts on these offensive lineman signings?
My first thought is there is almost no contract on here that I don't like. All these guys are good blockers. For the Mack and Long signings, yeah, they're getting older, but you're on 1 year deals here. And then Kyle Long, should be better with the year off. The Patriots getting David Andrews back was a surprise because they signed Ted Karras from the Dolphins, and it looked like Andrews was going to walk. Then he came back for a team discount for 4 years. I was stunned that he would take that big of a discount for 4 years, but he guess really wanted to stay. Filer, $7 million a year for versatile starting offensive lineman at guard or tackle. Sign me up. Zeitler, again, $7 million a year roughly for a player who was once one of the best guards in the league. Dropped off a little last year, but can still start. I'm all on board. Corey Linsley's the best center in the game, so $12 million a year to work with Justin Herbert. That's going to work out well. Joe Tooney is one of my favorite players. He never misses a snap. He can play any position on the offensive line, though he's best at left guard, which is where he should play for the Chiefs. I'm worried about the Chiefs tackle position right now, but they can address that in the draft. The one that stands out is a little odd is Trent Williams. I know you said it's basically a 3-year deal. I'm surprised that they signed him that long for that much money, even if the last 3 years are void years. Trent Williams was great last year, and he made a comeback from a scary situation in Washington where he had some cancerous or potentially cancerous growth on his head, and then he's held out a year. He had dealt with knee injuries in the past, but he went to San Francisco and blocked really well. So I'm all for them keeping him. I'm just a little concerned about the amount of money, $55 million guaranteed for an older player who has had a history of knee injuries. That would be my one concern here. Every other signing, though, I love. If you can beef up the offensive line, you have to do it. Even in a year where the draft is pretty strong at tackle, I think the more you can invest in the offensive line, the better. I'm especially happy with the Chargers getting 2 of the top free agents on the market.
Yeah, I mean, a big part of our handicapping in the super contest is how teams are doing on the offensive line, if they're missing multiple starters on the offensive line. And building up your blocking is so important, especially if you have a younger quarterback. Like you mentioned with Justin Herbert, the Corey Linsley signing was amazing. Probably the best one here. I think it's tied with Joe Tooney. Because we saw what happened with Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. Even the best quarterback in the NFL needs a good offensive line. Otherwise, he can't beat the best team, as we saw. So those 2 signings were the best. David Andrews, a close third, I think. He's had some injuries, recently, but I think that's a great deal for less than $20 million for 4 years. The 1 year deals I think are great because there's no risk. Obviously, there's downside. There would be downside if there were longer deals, but there's not any downside really. Filer's a solid signing. But yeah, I agree with you about Trent Williams. Is a lot more money than I thought he would get. I thought he would get like a 2 year, $20 million, something like that. Like 1 year, $10 million, 1 year, $12 million. This is so much money, so many years for offensive lineman who's had, as you said, injury issues, other issues in the past. And plus he's older. So, he could regress. Probably not. Like he's like, in all likelihood, he's probably going to play well for them. But he could miss time. And, if he does, I think this is going to be disastrous. So if I'm the 49ers, they have a bunch of draft picks. I think I would take a tackle in like rounds 3 through 5. It's kind of like an insurance policy for Trent Williams. But, keeping him is a good move overall. I just think they paid him too much money. But yeah, I agree. I mean, all these signings, none of them are terrible.
Yeah, the one thing I'll say about Trent Williams, too, is I had Joe Tooney and Corey Linsley as my top 2 free agent offensive linemen in general on the market. And Williams checked in at number 3 amongst the O-linemen for me. So I think it was just maybe the initial shock of seeing him get so much. And I know he plays tackle, which is more of a premium position than guard and center is at least compensated as now, even though we could argue that guards and centers are just as important now because of interior pressure. So I think that was part of it too, because I was like, oh yeah, these guys got, this much money. Trent Williams won't get a ton more than that. And it was like, all right, he's getting like double what Corey Linsley got at least on the surface. So that was just what surprised me. But like you said, I think it'll end up panning out.
Yeah, I think it's the left tackle premium. I mean, he's the only left tackle we mentioned on this list. But yeah, I like like you said, guard and center play has gotten so much more important. They're not going to make a movie about it with Sandra Bullock in it, but these positions are important. I know for a fact that Drew Brees thought that interior pressure was worse for him than edge pressure. So yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Defensive linemen, there weren't many like impactful signings. I had 3 down. Giants re-signed Leonard Williams, 3 years, $63 million. Jaguars signed Roy Robertson Harris, 3 years, $24.4 million. And the Vikings signed Dalvin Tomlinson, 2 years, $22 million. So what are your thoughts on these?
My favorite one's the Dalvin Tomlinson deal. It screams of the Linval Joseph deal. When the Vikings signed Linval Joseph away from the Giants, and Joseph was one of the best run stuffers in the game, and he made a massive impact right away on the Vikings. I could see Dalvin Tomlinson doing the same thing, and he's still young enough that he could develop as a pass rusher. So I really like the fit there. The Leonard Williams signing struck me as odd that he would get over $20 million a year. I know he's on the franchise tag, and the Giants really, really like his skill set. But he had 11 and a half sacks last year, but before that, he hadn't done as much. And I know not everything's in sacks. There's a lot of pressure numbers and everything too. But I don't know if I thought Leonard Williams had quite earned that level of pay just yet. But, you know, I could see it for the Giants because they have lacked pass rush at various times throughout their year, throughout their history or the last few years. And when they've been their best, they've had great pass rushes. So why not retain your best pass rusher? So I understand it from their standpoint, but $63 million over 3 years with $45 million guaranteed is a lot for Leonard Williams, I thought.
Yeah, that's a lot of money for a guy who has been accused of loafing a little bit. It kind of makes me concerned. You know, he was up for a contract. It's understandable that he played so well last year. It's a great season. But can he do it again? Maybe, but I would, if I were to bet, you know, old Kenny saying, if you put a gun to my head and made me bet $1, if Leonard Williams would match what he did last year, I'd say no. So I think he was overpaid. Totally agree. Yeah, actually Tomlinson made me remember of that Linval Joseph signing. I think it's a good move. Not much risk, it's only 2 years. So I think it's definitely a good move. Roy Robertson Harris is okay. I mean, they have to replace Calais Campbell. And it has to be done with so many guys because there's no one player who can replace Campbell who's available for the Jaguars right now. So, yeah, it's a fine signing. Not too much there. The edge rushers, there were a bunch of them. Titans signed Bud Dupree, 5 years, $82.5 million. Buccaneers re-signed Shaq Barrett, 4 years, $72 million. Rams re-signed Leonard Floyd, 4 years, $64 million. Bengals signed Trey Hendrickson, 4 years, $60 million. Patriots signed Matthew Judon, 4 years, $56 million. Jets signed Carl Lawson, 3 years, $45 million. Patriots re-signed Dietrich Weiss, 4 years, $30 million. Jets signed Carl Lawson. They say that for 3 years, $45 million. And then the Raiders signed Yannick Ngakoue, 2 years, $26 million. So what are your thoughts on these?
So Ngakoue stands out as I'm surprised he didn't get a longer and more lucrative deal. He's one of the best pure pass rushers in the NFL. And that's something that the Raiders needed because now they have him, Cleveland Ferrell, and Max Crosby. So the three of them all together should make a good pass rushing trio, and that should help the Raiders defense a lot. I think it was you who pointed this out in your write-up of this grade, but he got the same amount as Nelson Aguilar. So if you had to pick in a vacuum between which one of those players you'd rather have, I think the Raiders got the better deal.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah, so I believe that was you, so I'll credit you there. I also love Shaq Barrett going back to the Bucs. One of the reasons they're so good is because their defense is so good, and he's a huge part of it. They're excellent pass rush. Him and Jason Pierre-Paul really make a difference for that team. If they had lost him, they would have needed to replace him and added depth at the position. Now they just need to add depth, and they could do that in the draft. So I was happy with that. One of the ones that struck me as the most odd was Leonard Floyd. This is a similar situation to the Leonard we described earlier, Leonard Williams, and that Leonard Floyd had one really good season with the Rams. And now he's getting paid, if my math is correct here, I think 16 million a year. That seems like a lot. And he could easily, regress back to what he had previously done. And it's worth noting that 5 of his sacks on the season came against the Seahawks. So if you just look at the raw stat line, it's like, oh yeah, that looks pretty good. But he got like half of his sacks, I think, against Seattle, which has a bad enough offensive line that Russell Wilson publicly aired his frustration with it. So I think that there's a ton of risk in that signing. Also thought there was a lot of risk in the Bud Dupree signing. I was surprised he got more than Shaq Barrett because Dupree's coming off of a major injury. And, he's been productive over the course of his career, especially in recent seasons. And the Steelers really missed him when he was out. But we don't know if he's going to be 100% next year to kick things off. He might have to miss the beginning of the season. May take him time to get up to speed. And you just never know how a player is going to respond to an injury. So I thought that was I was surprised he got 5 years. I thought he was going to have to take a prove-it deal and then maybe get a 5-year or longer contract. But those two stood out as one that I was like, wow, I'm really surprised these guys are getting money. And, they're both talented and they could easily pan out. But I think there's a lot of risk in those two moves. Whereas, Barrett and Ngakoue, there's basically no risk with Ngakoue. And Barrett, I think, has done enough to prove that he deserves that deal.
Yeah, I was surprised Barrett went back to Tampa. I think we all assumed that they're going to lose Barrett or maybe someone else, and it seems like they've retained everyone almost. Ndamukong Suh's still out there, but it sounds like they're trying to resign him, and then Fournette probably gonna head elsewhere. But yeah, I like the Barrett was a great move. Yannick Ngakoue, the Raiders almost traded for him a year ago. They were going to give up the 19th pick in the draft, and then the Jaguars at the last second, they're like, no, we want the 12th pick. And so they couldn't agree to a deal, and the Raiders ended up getting Ngakoue for not any draft pick. So I think this is a fantastic signing, and only $13 million a year for 2 years. There's almost no risk there. So I think that was probably the best move out of all these signings that we mentioned. I like Carl Lawson a lot for 3 years, $45 million. There's not as much risk as you see at the top of these signings, and Lawson's a very young player. The Jets haven't had a great edge rusher for a long time, like a really long time, and so Lawson could finally be that answer that they've been looking for a while. But yeah, the two worst ones, I think we agree. Leonard Floyd, yeah, he's had one good year in his career, and you're going to give him $64 million. Like, that's crazy. It's a great stat, by the way. I didn't realize that almost half the sacks came against Seattle. And you have to remember, like, he's getting like Aaron Donald commands so much attention. Like, is Floyd going to play well if Donald gets hurt? Like probably not, right? So I think that's a bad signing. Bud Dupree has never played well outside of his contract year. Like, he was considered a bust heading into 2019. And in 2019, he was heading into his contract year. He was franchised, and then 2020 again, contract year. So he's played well the past 2 years. And as you said, they missed him down the stretch when he was out. But yeah, he's never played well outside of his contract year, and I think giving him that much money is so much of a risk. We saw the Titans whiff on edge rushers last year. I think they could whiff again, especially with that injury that you mentioned. I think I don't think it's a good signing at all. Yeah, otherwise, all the other ones were pretty solid. Not much else to say about them. Hendrickson, some people might be like, who is this guy? Why is he getting $60 million? But he was great for the Saints last year, and he's super young. So a lot of upside there, but there is some risk.
Yeah, and the other one that I love as a scheme fit is Matthew Judon with the Patriots. They need their rush linebackers to be able to do everything. That's why they brought Kyle Van Noy back, because he can play at the linebacker position and play on the edge. Judon will be on the edge for them exclusively, but he does well setting a hard edge against the run, and is also a solid pass rusher. Like, he doesn't get massive sack numbers, and they probably overpaid for him a little bit in terms of that, but they needed just someone to consistently get pressure because they lacked that last year. So having him and Kyle Van Noy back, and then Dietrich Wise is coming back too. I like that fit there. The same way that Carl Lawson, as you mentioned, is going to be a great fit for the Jets because he fits that scheme very well. So yeah, like we said with the offensive line, I think anytime you can get a good pass rusher on a solid deal, you're doing yourself a favor in the Super Bowl race. I think most of these teams did it, and a couple of them paid a little bit too much for him.
Yeah, it's a little too much. Yeah. So the linebackers we kind of talked about already a couple weeks ago with Levante David and Matt Milano. So there were no other real like significant signings of linebackers. So we just move on to corner. The Jaguars signed Shaq Griffin, 3 years, $44.5 million. Redskins signed William Jackson, 3 years, $42 million. Giants signed Adoree Jackson, 3 years, $39 million. Broncos signed Ronald Darby, 3 years, $30 million. Browns signed Troy Hill, 4 years, $24 million. The Bengals signed Mike Hilton, 4 years, $24 million, and Chidobe Awuzie, 3 years, $21.75 million. Vikings signed Patrick Peterson, 1 year, $10 million. Broncos signed Kyle Fuller, 1 year, $9.5 million, and the Colts re-signed Xavier Rhodes, 1 year, $6.5 million. So what are your thoughts on all these corner signings?
So I'll start with the 3 1-year deals for Peterson, Fuller, and Rhodes. No brainers. All are great. There's no risk in any of them, especially Xavier Rhodes to the Colts. The fact that he got $6.5 million to return there is, I thought he would get more. He played really, really, really well for them last year. But I guess there just wasn't as much of a market out there for him. Peterson should upgrade the Vikings cornerback room. They needed a veteran too. All of their players at the position last year were 24 or younger, I think, or at least had three or fewer years of league experience. Peterson has experience, and Fuller has played in Vic Fangio's defense, so needless to say, he fits there. As for the rest of the deals, the 3 that I really like: Shaq Griffin to the Jaguars, William Jackson to Washington, and Ronald Darby to the Broncos. For Shaq Griffin, he's one of my favorite players to watch. He's just so physical. He does really well in all sorts of coverage. I thought he was going to get more than he got. He got just under $15 million a year. So I think for the Jaguars, pairing him with CJ Henderson, who's a bit more athletic and fast, I think that's a good pairing, because Griffin can bring some physicality, and Henderson can, use his speed and cover faster receivers. So those 2 pair well together. William Jackson III, really good, one of the best kept secrets in the NFL, because the Bengals secondary is terrible, but don't blame him for that. He was really excellent in coverage last year. Washington has a borderline elite defense. They just needed a true number 1 corner. They got it, and William Jackson with a pass rush in front of him is going to be really, really good. So I think he's going to fit in well there. And Ronald Darby going to the Broncos, he signed exactly the deal I thought he was going to sign. I projected him for a 3-year, $10 million a year annually, and that's what he got. He got maybe a little more in guarantees than I would give to a guy who's only played 1 full season, but he was really good last year. He's still pretty young, and he's going to be asked to be the number 2 corner in Denver across from Fuller. And then you have Michael Ojemudia, who looked good as a rookie, and then also Bryce Callahan, if he can stay healthy in the slot. So I like what Denver's doing at corner, but I really like those 3 signings in addition to all the 1-year deals. I just really think that the corner market wasn't as expensive as I thought, so teams that spent there generally did well.
Yeah, I think in order of the 1-year signings, I think Fuller, then Rhodes, then Peterson. Peterson wasn't very good last year, but he can rebound. Like, he's not that old. He's in his early 30s. So, he definitely bounce back. And the Vikings, especially under Mike Zimmer, he can get the most out of Peterson, I think, at this age. Rhodes is so cheap, $6.5 million, but Fuller's so young and only $9.5 million plus the scheme familiarity. It just no brainer. So all those signings are great. I like the Shaq Griffin and William Jackson signings as well. I like Jackson more. I think that's probably my favorite one outside of the 1-year deals. To give Chase Young more help, like at corner, like it's just gonna be ridiculous. That defense is gonna be awesome. And Shaq Griffin, the Jaguars need a number 2 corner outside, like on the other side of CJ Henderson. So I like that signing too. The other ones are fine. I don't really hate anything here. Ronald Darby for $30 million. Like, if you were to tell me he's going to be healthy, it'd be a great signing. The problem is that he's been so banged up, so I'm not sure if he can live up to that contract. But yeah, if he can stay healthy, that's definitely, he could definitely do that. Chidobe Awuzie, 3 years, $21.75 million. Like, maybe that's a tad too much, but I think that's okay. Like I said, I don't hate any of these signings.
Yeah, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find any really bad signing on here. Some people might do a double take on the Adoree Jackson contract number, the 3 years, $39 million that's been reported. But people forget he was a first-round pick, and he played pretty well for the Titans in previous years. Just this last year, he was hurt a lot. And then, by the time he came back, that defense was all sorts of out of sorts. So I think he'll bounce back, especially if they play him in the slot. And he has kick return value, too. People forget about that. So I think that'll be a nice little boost for the Giants too.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like he's an injury question mark, just like Ronald Darby. So those are two similar signings. But yeah, I think Jackson has more upside than Darby. Like you said, former first round pick plus the kick returning ability. And the Giants, I mean, if Jackson stays healthy, they suddenly have a great secondary. So if they can get a pass rush, it's going to be very difficult to throw on the Giants. We had a question earlier, I think, it said, are the Redskins the best team in the division? I think it's between the Redskins and the Giants. I think it's going to be a tight race, kind of like it was last year, but both teams are going to have more wins, I think, right?
Yeah, I would hope they have more wins at this point. I think for Washington, it depends on how their quarterbacks play. For the Giants, I think it's the offense in general. Like if Saquon Barkley comes back and is great, that can mitigate a little bit of the pressure on Daniel Jones. But yeah, for them too, it's can they get a pass rush? Can they get their offense sorted out? So I have a little more faith in Washington right now just because of how great that defense looks, especially if they draft some linebackers to help out and find a free safety, which I think they will. But yeah, that's gonna be a fun division to watch once again, and not because it's terrible. Hopefully,
yeah. I think it's Washington by a little bit, and then the Giants, and then the Cowboys, and then the Eagles are definitely the worst team. All right, safeties. The Broncos re-signed Justin Simmons, 4 years, $61 million. The Jaguars signed Rayshon Jenkins, 4 years, $35 million. The Browns signed John Johnson, 3 years, $33.75 million. And the Patriots signed Jalen Mills, 4 years, $24 million. So what are your thoughts on the safety signings?
My first thought is 2 Boston College safeties out of the 4 that have signed so far. So take that for what it's worth. But yeah, if you look at these contracts, there's nothing I really hate here. I like Justin Simmons and John Johnson. I think they're the 2 best players. Johnson's deal is just $11 million a year, which seems really cheap for him, but I think he took a little bit of a discount to go to the Browns. I'm not entirely sure. I can't remember if that was him or Troy Hill. It was one of those Rams defensive backs. So I like how he's going to fit there. I think he makes that defense really, really scary. I like Jalen Mills' fit with the Patriots too. They needed kind of a do-it-all defensive back because Patrick Chung retired. And I think paying him $6 million a year as just a guy who can play literally any position back in the secondary, maybe he's best at safety, but yeah, he can play corner, he can play in the slot. I think that's really helpful for them. And he's only guaranteed $9 million. So if things don't work out, like you're not going to lose a ton if you have to cut him next year. So I don't have a ton of opinions on the Rayshon Jenkins signing. I think that was fine for the Jaguars. I mean, you're adding him and Shaq Griffin, so hopefully that secondary is going to look a lot better and be a key building block for them as they look to rebuild and retool for the future. So I don't think that there's anything bad here. Much like the cornerback room, I think most of these guys should pan out as solid starters.
Yeah, I like these signings. I don't hate any of them. The Jalen Mills signing was, I thought, really good. We talked about how Bill Belichick struggles to find pass catchers. I mean, he's so good with defensive backs. So I think Mills is a great fit. He's so versatile. He can play anywhere in the secondary, and to have someone like that, I think Belichick's going to love him. Bringing back Simmons, he's one of the best safeties in the NFL. It's a no-brainer. And John Johnson's a good safety. We'll see how he does outside of the Rams scheme. He's going to have worse talent around him in Cleveland, although Cleveland has a good defense. It's not as good as the Rams, so we'll see if Johnson thrives. I think he's going to be fine, so I like that move. And I think the Jaguars overpaid a little bit for Jenkins, but the Jaguars had the most cap space in the NFL. They're going to have a rookie quarterback under contract for 4 years. So this is the time to do it. Like they have so much money to spend, and like they have to be good they have to surround Trevor Lawrence with good players, and they could do that. This 4-year deal kind of like mirrors, it's going to mirror Trevor Lawrence's deal. So it's going to be up when Lawrence's contract is up. So it's good timing. So I think the Jaguars did a smart move here. Smart moves overall in free agency. So so that's it for the safeties. And let's get to the kickers. Just kidding. We're not going to do kickers. So we had a couple questions. Do you think the Cardinals will make the playoffs next year?
I think they could. They got Rodney Hudson at center, which was a massive upgrade. I don't know if the details, that might have been a trade. I can't remember if the details. Yeah, there was a trade. They got Rodney Hudson. That's going to help them a lot. So I could definitely see them doing it. The NFC is crowded, and they play in one of the toughest divisions in football, especially with the Rams playing well. But hey, maybe if things don't go well in San Francisco again, the quarterback situation's not great there. Maybe things happen. Maybe if Seattle has Russell Wilson force his way out, I don't think that happens, but you never know. If those two things happen, I think the Cardinals will stand a shot. They'll stand a shot anyway, but I think it's going to be tougher for them, but I could see it happening if they keep upgrading that defense, especially.
Yeah, you know what? Before the Hudson trade, I would have said no, because the Cardinals are and they're in the toughest division in football. And if the Cardinals were in any division, any other division, if they're still in the NFC East, especially, like, yes, I would say they would make the playoffs. But it's every team in the division is good, every single one. So before the Hudson trade, I said no. Now with the Hudson trade, I would say yes. I think the Cardinals wouldn't make the playoffs unless Kyler Murray gets injured. So I think that's the key. Murray got hurt last year. I think the Cardinals would have made the playoffs if Murray didn't get banged up in that Thursday night game against Seattle. The Cardinals kind of sputtered a little bit after that. And if they didn't, like, I feel like they would have beaten New England if he was healthy, and he wasn't. And so they lost that game, and it made all the difference. So got a question for Jacob here. What should I expect from Derek Rivers and Marcus Cannon?
All right, Derek Rivers, you can expect pretty much nothing. He's a good guy. I have met him. He's a very nice guy, but he's dealt with injury issues. So he's probably competing for a depth spot as a pass rusher. Maybe he puts it all together now, but I would not expect him to make the team. Marcus Cannon has always been a solid starter at right tackle. He's been up and down. I can't remember if the thing was he was good in even years and bad in odd years, or if it was vice versa. But, he was kind of up and down during his Patriots tenure, but was generally good. Some years he would look like, oh, man, this guy could be a Pro Bowl talent. And some years it'd be like, all right, you're getting by starting him, but you need to replace him. I think that he's an upgrade for the Texans, though. So he can start for a year, maybe two more. Maybe he moves back to a swing tackle role if the Texans land an upgrade at the right tackle spot. But you're not going to go wrong with Cannon on your roster. And, Rivers is a good competitive piece. I know I said don't expect anything, but, if he can develop as a pass rusher, maybe he'll pan out. Okay.
So we had one more. Trying to find it. Okay. How do you think my Bills did in free agency? So they didn't really do all that much. They signed Emmanuel Sanders. They lost John Brown. They signed Matt Hack, however you pronounce his name, the punter. They signed Trubisky, as we discussed. They signed Jacob Hollister. They lost Quentin Jefferson on top of John Brown. They re-signed Matt Milano, which I thought was a really good move. I think we discussed it 2 weeks ago. I can't remember. They re-signed Levi Wallace to a one-year deal. We didn't mention him with the corners as another one-year deal. I thought was really good. They re-signed Darrell Williams. I think we discussed that as well. So I think they did okay. I think they did well. No like splash moves or anything, but they did well to keep their key players, which I think was good overall.
Yeah, I agree. I think keeping Williams and Milano was huge for them, and Wallace too on a one-year deal. That was really good deal for them. I liked adding Trubisky. I also like Jacob Hollister. They needed kind of a steady pass catching weapon at the tight end spot. Maybe he can challenge Dawson Knox. If not, he's a good backup. So I think they've done as well as they can. I think that, I wasn't a huge fan of the swap John Brown for Emmanuel Sanders move. Like, if you're getting rid of Brown, why would you just not roll with Gabe Davis? Or if you really want 4 good receivers, just keep Brown. Maybe it was a cap space thing, but I don't hate that, but it was just kind of a little weird to me.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the Sanders signing. I think that's like the one thing they did that I'm not a fan of. It's not a huge deal or anything, but he didn't play well for the Saints last year with Drew Brees and Michael Thomas being out. Like he was asked to be the number one receiver and he failed. Now, obviously, he's not going to be the number one receiver in Buffalo unless there's so many injuries. But I would not be surprised if he doesn't make the team. I just don't think he has much left in him. So I think that's how it's going to go. Kenny says, breaking news, Flacco, 2020, Flacco signs with the Jets, 1 year, $1.5 million. He went 0-4, was the second worst quarterback, and today he signed a 1 year, $3.5 million deal. What a deal.
Wow. I knew he signed with the Eagles. I didn't know he was making more than he made last year. I saw someone I can't remember who it was. I follow AJ Schulte from Pro Football Network. I think he posted that Joe Flacco's advanced stats last year, some of them were actually better than Jalen Hurts. So, who knows? Maybe he'll end up being better, or at least more accurate if he's coming in. But I have no faith in Joe Flacco. So, the fact that he got $3.5 million is something. But, you got to spend up for those elite quarterbacks, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, where else can you get that sort of production that Kenny mentioned? I didn't know about that. I was out since like 4 o'clock, and I came home, showered, and then started talking to you amid doing my DraftKings lineup for NBA. So this is news to me. And to grade this, I'm going to give it an F.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. All right. That's about it for our free agency breakdown. I'm sure there are going to be more signings that we'll get to next week. And maybe hopefully some trades. The Zach Ertz is supposed to be traded at some point. So hopefully we'll get to discuss that. But yeah, otherwise, do you have anything to plug?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Jacob Camenker, and you can follow all my work at the many places I work. NBC Sports Boston, NBC Sports Northwest, Sporting News, and obviously follow this podcast here, like and subscribe, and please feel free to comment on it and interact with us. We appreciate all you guys. But yeah, if you want to talk more football with me, follow me on Twitter at Jacob Camenker. I'm always there. I will try to respond. I usually forget for a long time and then eventually show my face. But yeah, let's keep enjoying this fun football off season.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for mentioning the like, subscribe, comment. I would have forgotten it, so I really appreciate it. It's kind of rusty here off the week from the week off, but yeah, it's great to be back and talking about football. And it was a fun free agency, and there's still some signings left to be done. So looking forward to the second half of it. So I'm at WallStreetFootball.com. We graded every free agent signing that's available. There are some signings that happened that we don't have contract numbers on, like Deshaun Jackson, Kareem Jackson today, Janoris Jenkins, Sidney Jones, Denzel Perriman, Kevin Johnson, Malik Jackson, Josh Reynolds. Like, I have a list on my computer that I cannot grade because we don't have contract information yet. But once they come in, I will grade them. So we'll grade everything. Plus 2021 NFL mock draft updated today. Charlie's was updated yesterday. So it's updated for free agency. So check that out. Otherwise, I will talk to you next week.
All right. Sounds good. Talk to you then.
All right. Bye.